if I see my next slide. Yeah. Okay. I think I put that away. Sorry, just pushing that. Okay, so what we'll learn tonight, hopefully, different aspect of accessibility and how people with disability uses tech. So for this one, I'm probably going to give you some clues and you can look on your own time. We'll see why it's important to consider and how to make your social post, the social media post accessible, how to make your document accessible, and I'll tell you a bit about WCAG. And first, let me see. Sorry, I'm just struggling with my slide. Next one. Okay. So yeah, I don't know if any of you know that, but sometimes accessibility, you will see it's written like that, A with 11 and Y. It's just to make it shorter, and it's because there's 11 letters between A and the last Y. So I don't know if you had ever seen it, but sometimes you'll see it's written like that, especially with hashtags on social media, just simply because it's quicker. So in the UK, you have 1 out of 5 persons with a disability. And usually when we speak about accessibility, that's what we think of, it's for people with disabilities. So digital accessibility specifically, it's the ability for a website or a mobile application or an electronic document to be easily navigated and understood by a wide range, very different users, including those who have some visual or hearing problem or motor or cognitive disabilities. So that's what digital accessibility is about. So the thing is there's a bit more to that. It's not just for people with disability. We'll see that, yes, it's good for them, but in fact, it's good for everyone. So I hope that's the point that I'm gonna manage to put across tonight. If you make it better for people with disability, you improve your website and your app for everyone. And that's a quote I've heard not long ago and think it was really good. So my needs are different from any of you needs, but also something that we sometimes don't realize is my need today, they might be different tomorrow. So when you think you might not need to know about accessibility, well, you never know what tomorrow is gonna bring. So there's 4 big categories. There's visual disabilities, hearing, motor, and cognitive. So we'll see a bit more about each of them. So usually when you think about vision impairment, you think about blindness, and there's a legal definition to blindness, but it doesn't mean you can't see anything. So a lot of people who are registered blind can actually read from the screen, but usually they can't use a mouse. And often they won't be able to see properly your images, or if you put a video or a graphic. And if the layout of your page is a bit awkward, they might struggle to navigate. So that's the main difficulties they usually have. And usually that's the one thing that most people know about accessibility. They think screen readers is something that's going to play back what's on your screen. And the most known one are NVDA, because it's free, JAWS, because it's been there forever and lots of people still use it, VoiceOver, because it's on iPhone. And in the homework, you'll see I've put you 2 links. If you want to try, you can try on your phone. It's actually quite easy to see how a screen reader works on your phone. So I've given 2 links to make it easy for you to find it and try. But that's for after the class. One thing I'd like to show you, it's a 2-minute video from someone using an iPhone. I hope it's gonna work. I think I need to share a different one. Sorry. That's my screen. Okay. Sorry about that. If I do it from my video, do you think it's going to work from the slide, Chris?
It should do.
Okay, so maybe I'll share again. Maybe that's the easiest way to do. Otherwise, I'll leave that. But it was quite a good video. So share. I've said. Sorry, I've just have a Google Chrome thing that I've lost. Can you see the screen reader video again?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I'll try that. Hopefully it's gonna work.
Hi, I'm Christy. I'm just showing a little video of how a blind person would use an iPhone. So basically,
Double tap Twitter.
you go to, you run your finger along the screen and you find what you're looking for. And there's like a little bit of a vibration, so it helps too. And it reads everything on the screen as you're going. And so then I open
Vertical scroll bar. 46, 36, 26, 66,
and
0,
it's at the top of the Twitter page now.
Compose tweet.
And I'm gonna compose a tweet.
Cap F.
And
Foxtrot.
normally you would use the regular keyboard here, but the iPhone also has this other keyboard
Braille
where
screen
when you turn it,
Orientation locked.
now I can
Charge point to
braille
left. Screen away
and
mode.
use a braille
6
keyboard. So
dot 6 cap I apostrophe M space REATING space A space TWEET space RIGHT space NOW period now space dot 6 cap I space LOVE space EFING space M1 space I cap AONE period iPhone
and so
portrait
then they can read what I wrote.
cap G using my iPhone voice recording text field is editing. I'm creating a tweet right now. I love using my iPhone. Character mode. Insertion point at end.
So I could share that if I want,
Misspelled words.
but that's pretty much the idea.
Twitter.
And so you double tap on anything to open it,
Doc. Messages. Safari.
and it'll bring up whatever. So basically it just reads whatever is on my screen, and then I can interact with it and double tap or triple tap or scroll using 3 fingers up and down.
Next. Button. Address. Google.com. Address. Delete. Selection deleted. HTTPS Braille screen input. ELOGFPOT period. OM. Portrait. Go. Go. Next. Button. Address. Blogger.com. Secure and validated connection. 1392. Read more. Link. Blogger's new interface is now available automatically.
So yeah, that's basically how I would use my iPhone.
So I don't know if you've seen how fast she was going, and that's usually one of the things that's quite surprising.
Hi, this is Christy. I did a video 2 days ago on...
It's usually quite surprising when you see people using a screen reader, how fast they use it. And it's important to see that, because quite a lot of people don't realize that people who are blind do use their phone, and they use it differently, but they do. So all the slides as well, I wanted to mention that you'll be able to see, you'll get access to the slides, so you can go back to it and you'll have all the links and all that. So it's not just about blind user, there's also people with low vision. So that's just illustration of different problems you can have and different way you might be able to see or not. So sometimes you just see part of your screen. It can be blurry, can be black, that's tunnel vision. So you can maybe see only a part of your screen. And if you are with low vision, you might need to magnify, and we're going to try that in an exercise after. So if your content is not on the left and something is on the right, the person who's magnifying the screen might completely miss it. You might need to be able to scroll both vertically but also horizontally, and you can get lost in a page. So that's the main issue you usually have with low vision. These posters are really good. There's more for all types of disabilities. I'm going to leave them for you to go back to, but basically every time you have a column that says what the good thing to do and what to avoid, so the do's and the don'ts. and use that's for the screen reader and low vision. There's going to be more like that. You should really take some time and watch all these posters. They're quite good. Color blindness, so that's another problem you might have with vision. It's quite common. I think it's 1 in 10 person. It doesn't mean you don't see colors at all, but you don't see colors the same. There's different type, as you can see. So here, for example, so that's at the top, that's normal vision. And it's slightly different depending on the problem you have, if it's the green, the blue, or the red that you don't see well. So that's going to be the first part of exercise. So I think you're going to be sharing the link in the chat, Chris. I'm going to give you 10 minutes to do that, but basically I took one website. The website is the Morrison's website. And I'd like you to try to see how you experience the website when you magnify the screen. So it means you're going to zoom. To do that, you just do Control and the plus. You try to do it at least 200, 300, and if you can, up to 400. That's the maximum. And try to see how you can navigate the website. Also, try to pay attention to some of the icons and all that. You'll see what you think about the contrast, and try to imagine some of the people who had the problems we see before using that website, and try to see how problematic it could be for them. I think from now, if I leave you 10 minutes, and Chris, are you going to put them in breakout room?
I'll open breakout rooms now. And it'd be great if one person could share their screen. So open the website, share your screen, and then we can, in your groups, you can all talk about that, what that one person's saying. I'll give you 10 minutes from now.
Yeah, so I don't know what you've seen, but for example, see the text here, when it doesn't scale very well. When you make it big, it's kind of blurry because the text is in the picture. That's very bad practice. Here, I don't know if you can see the trolley very well, but you can imagine that for some people with vision problem, would be really hard to spot. And one thing, I don't know if you managed to follow the instruction, but if you go in the dev tool, there's something in the console. I've explained the step to take. You can try to reproduce how it looks for someone who's colorblind. So I'll try to show you on the picture, like for example, for these. So that's one type. So it shows you how it might appear to someone with one type of color blindness. So it can be a good tool to test if your website still makes sense depending on the colors you've chosen for someone who might be colorblind. So that's a good tool to use. Okay, so I'm gonna put that presentation mode. And now we're going to talk about hearing impairment. So there's 9 million people who are either deaf or hard of hearing. So again, there's a different level. So any audio you put on your website, or if there's no subtitle or transcript, they're going to struggle to understand what you mean. Any feedback sound, when something beeps, if there's not another form of feedback, they're not going to be able to notice that. And one thing that's important to notice as well, so sometimes they sign and that's their first language. English might not be their first language, so they might struggle with reading, or they might need a bit more time, even if you show them some English sentences. And when you ask them for a preferred method of contact, they might be a bit reluctant to give you their mobile phone. If they know you might call them, they're going to be okay with text, but probably not phone calls. So think about that when you ask for someone for a mobile phone. Ask them as well if they prefer to be text. If they're hard of hearing, it might be their preferred option. Motor impairment, so anything that has to do with movement, so either because you're missing a limb or a hand, or because you have spasm or tremors, or you have a lack of coordination. So usually it's going to be very hard for them to use the mouse, or doing something like a drag and drop is going to be hard. So if your website only allows drag and drop, that's going to be a problem for them. Selecting a link if things are too close to one another, small buttons or things too close are going to be also an issue for them. Buttons and links, basically. So there's some assisted device. We've seen the screen reader, but there's also things like a switch, a mouse head sticks. I'm going to show you some pictures on the next one, or some voice activated software. So speaking to your computer and doing things for like a bit like Siri, basically. But some of these assisted technology can be very expensive, and also they can create problem when they work with other software. So that's some example of it. You might have seen people using keyboards like that, or simplified keyboard. That's the mouth to stick, and that's a switch. Basically, it's something that's gonna, with one, depending on your action on that switch, it's gonna simplify the way you interact with your interface. And that's another type of switch as well, the big yellow ball. Again, so I'll go very quickly on that. They're very good at explaining what to do and not to do for people who are deaf or hard of hearing. And you have the same thing for people with motor disabilities. So have a look on your own time. They are really good posters. So the last category, so we've seen vision, hearing, and motor. There's cognitive impairment. So that's thing, it can be mild, it can be severe, it can be from time to time, but in that category, you've got autism, dyslexia, anxiety, lots of other things that you might not suspect, which might affect the way people interact with your website. Also affect how you memorize or how you're gonna make a decision, for example. So these are a bit less known, but it's quite an important group as well. Again, I'll let you look at the posters. They're really good, so worth spending some time on it. So for you to try to experience how it is if you are blind or if you have motor skills problem, I'd like you to try to use a website without using the mouse. So you're gonna have to use only your keyboard. And to navigate in your keyboard, you're going to use the tab key. And to move forward, you tap through the website. To move backward, you're going to have to press the shift. So it's the key with an arrow and tab. And if you press enter, that's going to do the same thing as if you had clicked on a link or a button. So try to do that on the ASDA website. And one thing I usually try to ask people is, imagine you're blind and you have a screen reader and you're using the keyboard. What you probably need to look for is a phone number, because you need to contact someone. How long it would take you on the ASDA website to find a phone number to contact ASDA. So try to tab through the website, don't use the mouse, and try to find how long it's going to take to get that phone number. And if you've got time, the apply for provisional driving license, that's a link that you should try on your phone. That website is a government website, but it doesn't scale well on a phone. And you'll see that everything becomes very, very small. And that's going to put you in the position of someone who might have problem tremors and all that, and how they would manage to do that. So it's just for you to realize how it could be difficult for other people. So again, you've got 10 minutes, and I hope I've made my instruction clear. If not, do ask.
Instructions are also in the chat now.
Okay, great.
Now.
Thank you. So I don't know if anyone had ever been tabbing through a website to navigate it. That's one thing as a developer. If usually once you've done something, try to do that, get a feel for the website, how someone who's at the mouse would be able to circulate in your website, how easy it is to reach every area that's crucial of your website. It's a good test to do. Tabbing through your website is a great test. And I don't know if you've tried applying for a provisional driving license on a phone. I don't think you can actually complete it on your phone, or you will need to be very patient and precise. So I hope they are doing something to improve that. So yeah, and that test, that's again, if you ever work for an organization, try to see how long it takes to get to the phone number tabbing through, because that puts you in the shoes of someone who might be blind and the only thing they want from your website is your phone number. So see how long it would take for them to get that information. So it's good exercise to keep doing. So invisible disabilities, that's not really a different group. For example, when someone is deaf, you might not be able to see that that person is deaf. So you might not realize immediately that there's an issue. And usually people imagine people with a disability with a wheelchair, but in fact, 93% of people who are disabled don't use a wheelchair. They are the exception. So an invisible disability, it can be physical, mental, or neurological, and you might not realize immediately, but still it does limit someone's ability daily. So there can be different things. Symptoms can be pain or fatigue or dizziness, learning differences, mental health disorder, vision impairment. You might not realize that someone has a vision impairment. And there's a wide range of conditions. And there's things like Crohn's disease, MS, autism, ME, lupus. There's many more. It would take too long to list all that. There's quite lots of people get abused because people don't realize there's a problem. So if they use the toilets, or if they might need a seat, and people sometimes judge for that. So there's some initiative like trying to make sure that people who are using accessibility toilets realize that it can be for everyone. Some people might not realize when they see someone thinking, well, they're not disabled, they shouldn't be using that. So they try to raise awareness so people don't feel judged when they use this space. For the train as well, you can ask for a badge like that. So I think it's London Transport who's doing that. So people might be more likely to offer a seat. I don't think it works too well, to be honest, but at least they're trying different initiatives to try to improve things. How people with disability uses tech. So in the Google Doc, you'll see some links of videos. There's lots of people playing video games, and it's just for you to realize that there's a wide variety of using technology that you might not realize. And I think it's good to see, so you get an awareness of that. So if you can do that as part of your homework. Now we're going to see why it's important to consider if you're not convinced yet. So that is something I often use. It's to make sure people realize that it can affect you. It will affect everyone at some point, because when you grow older, there's lots of things that are going to change. But also, so some people have a permanent disability. Sometimes it's just temporary because of an injury most of the time. But sometimes a situation puts you with the same problem as someone who's permanently disabled. So for example, if you only have one arm, well, that's going to limit your action daily. But you might have an arm injury, or you might just have a baby, or have lots of shoppings, and there's things you're not going to be able to do because you might be limiting to just one hand. Same thing when the vision, you might be blinded by the sun, or you might have a power cut at home. And so there's lots of situations that puts you exactly in the same situation as someone who's disabled. So if your website has been planned for people with access problem, when you're going to be in that situation, that's going to help you as well. So that's why it's really important to make sure that you plan for different situations. It's going to help everyone in the end. Yes, there's also legal requirement. That's usually why people do things, because they know they're going to have a problem legally. So we'll see a bit more about WCAG later. There's also that apply the UN Convention of the Right of People with Disability. We also have in the UK the Equality Act, and we have accessibility regulation from 2018. So there's lots of regulation, and there's things that are going to come in place in September. So all the websites for the government are all trying to be ready for that. So legal aspects are usually what makes people do the changes. Another thing is technically, if you, so sometimes you want to fix it technically because you realize you're going to have a legal problem. After the website has been designed, that's going to take you much longer to fix. If you thought about it at the time you were designing your website, that's going to be much easier. So it's good practice to think about it while you're doing it and not as an afterthought. It's also usually much easier to maintain. So important from a technical point of view and from a financial point of view, again, so if you need to fix it technically later, it's going to cost you more. You might have to change a lot of things in your code. And well, you also can have some legal issue and fine to pay, and then you need to fix it. So it can be very costly. And reputation, it can more and more, as you can see, disabled people do use the social media. They are using their phone, and they're going to make sure that you hear from them if they're not happy about something. And recently, I don't know if you've seen about the Twitter new feature, they were doing short audio clips. They completely forgot about subtitle. So, and at that point, we realized that a group like Twitter doesn't have an accessibility team. It's volunteer who are testing it for them. And obviously they've done something quickly, didn't realize it was lots of issues. So just an example, and I think they've talked about it for 2 or 3 days and then they had to fix it. So it's important to consider for all these reasons. It's going to cost you less, it won't damage your reputation, and you'll be respecting the rules. And again, it helps everyone. So that's important to remember that. And as a developer, as a future professional, more and more people are aware that you need to have that. Showing that you have an interest for accessibility is going to be good for your employability on your CV. So, and if you claim that you have an interest for accessibility, make sure that your portfolio and your website is accessible, because sometimes it's not the case. And remember that when you're going to be on a project team, accessibility is everyone's job. There's not one person who should think about it. It's the whole team. But as a developer, ultimately, your code is probably what's going to be the most problematic. So that's why I think it's really important for everyone to know about it. And if you're not sure about something, just ask the team. Make sure that everyone is aware. So all these reasons really is why, that's also why I think it was important to have that session, so people realize that even if you have just a basic awareness, that's still better than nothing. So one easy thing to do is making your social post accessible, because that's probably something you do every day, and there's things you might be doing that you don't realize are going to be problematic for other users. So for example, you need to, when you share a photo or a diagram, make sure that you include an alternative text. That's called an alt text when you code it. And there's 4 links here on about how to do that. Usually when you look at your Twitter feed or whatever, you'll see that most people don't do it. It doesn't take you much time. You just look at the picture you're about to share, think about a little sentence to describe it for someone who might not see it, and that's you. So if you want to know how to do it, you've got instruction here. Another thing that's really important as well is capitalizing the first letter of each word in your hashtag, because that's going to be read much better by a screen reader. But also for you, that's probably easier to see where something starts and ends. So it's better for everyone if you can remember to do that. Hopefully you don't have such a long hashtag. Make sure you caption your videos as well. And if you share video, if there's different option and you can share one with video with caption, that's much better. And there's also a YouTube video explaining how to do that. If you do your own video, make sure you put some caption. Emojis, so just so you're aware, if you use a screen reader, they're going to read every single emoji. So for example, this one would be smiley face emoji. So if you've put 4 of them, that's a lot of smiley face emojis, smiley face emojis. It's very annoying if you're using a screen reader. And usually you completely lose the sense of what's being said. So try to not put them, the worst thing you can do is put them in your display name, and you'll see lots of people have lots of icons at the top with their display name. So every time there's a tweet from you, they're going to hear all that. So sometimes they might just unfollow you because it's just too annoying. Hashtags and mention, if you can put them at the end, so that way your message is read and then you have the mention. Otherwise, it's also it can be harder for people to understand what you mean. And yeah, that's one thing you'll see a lot. Lots of people put things in capital. It makes things harder to read. So especially if you're dyslexic, but really it's for everyone, because the shape of a word helps you to guess what it is and it makes you read quicker. So if you put something in capital, it's going to slow you down. Plus it looks like you're yelling anyway. So that's something that people don't always realize. Even in people doing things for accessibility, they don't always realize that that's going to be a problem for people with dyslexia. So try not to do that. So if you want, as a group, you can try to, so you'll see the link about how to put an alt text if you don't know on social media. So if you want to try to share a photo, and just scroll through your social media, your preferred one in your news feed, and try to see all the things if you see the hashtags, if you see videos, let's check if there's some subtitles, and any video, in any photo, does it have an alt tag? So for that, you might need to look at the dev tool to make sure that they have an alt tag for that. An alt text, sorry. So yeah, again, 10 minutes if you want to try to do that.
There you go. Recordings are open now.
And if you're an organization and you want to do a social media campaign, that link is really good. It explains lots of things. So if you have some time, you have some time to read this one. It's made by the government. It's actually quite good. Okay, so I'll go back to present mode. And so now we've seen for the social media, how to make your document accessible. A document, it could be an email, it could be a document you're going to do for your team. Just any document. You don't know who's going to read your document. And as you saw, some people have invisible disability. You might not know they don't see well, or so it's important to follow some basic rules. So I'm going to show you some of these rules now. So that's from Council. Basically, they've developed something called SCULPT. So SCULPT is just an acronym they wanted a way for the people working at that council to remember the basic rules when they create documents. So they came up with this, and they've put it everywhere in the department so people would remember when they were creating documents. So the S is for the structure. Make sure that I think I've got, yeah, I'm going to go back in every slide, but basically, so S is for the structure. C is for the color and color contrast in particular. U is for the use of image, and it's going to be alt text again. L is for link, P is for talking in plain English, and T is for table. So I think I'm going to go back one by one. So for example, when you write a text, a document, sometimes for the headings, instead of taking the piece of text and making that a heading in Word, for example, people just make it bigger and they put some bold text. So if you see, you're going to see a difference. But if you are using a screen reader, the screen reader is not going to say it's bold or it's bigger. It's just going to read it as any part of the text. So try to remember to follow that structure for someone who might be using a screen reader. If your heading is a heading, declare it as a heading. Don't just make it look like a heading. If you can align your text on the left, that's because when you've tried to magnify your screen, if you put things on the right, people might not see it when they navigate your website. If it's on the left, they're more likely to see it. So try to always start on the left. That's how I've done my slide. Instead of putting the heading in the center, I've put it on the left. So if you were to magnify this, you would see there's something to read and you would scroll. And also don't justify your text. So that's an example just to show when you justify, it looks nice because it aligns your text on both sides. So some people like it because that looks nicer, but then it also adds some random space between the word depending on how it cuts. And that makes it much harder to read, especially if you're dyslexic. So try not to do that. Color contrast, that's a big one. So if you remember the trolley on Morrison, that would have been really hard to spot. But it's also the case, so sometimes people do a website that looks really nice, but if you struggle to see the colors, some people are going to struggle to read. So there's a way to make sure that the contrasts are good enough. There's norms to respect normally. So that's one of the websites. There's many websites that's going to help you with the color contrast. It's going to tell you if it's good enough. And also remember never to just use color to say something. So for example, here I've put the exclamation mark to show you that it's important. So if someone doesn't see red, it's bold and there's the little sign, especially for error messages. So make sure that when you want to convey something and information, don't only put it by color. And the same way, don't only put it with a beep that someone might not hear. So always make sure that when something is important, you have different ways to convey that information for people. Alternative text, so that's what we've seen. So it's going to be read by the screen reader, so it's important to have it. Including in some documents. So for example, in this document, I don't think I can show you in presentation mode. But for example, this picture, if you click on it here, I've put an alt text for it. And I've explained that it's the SCULPT poster explaining, and I've put all that. So someone who can't see the picture, they would still know what I mean. So try to remember to always do that. It's once you are in the habit of doing it, you'll do it automatically. So even for documents like that, I mean that document could be used by someone with a screen reader. So try to always think about that. So color contrast. Okay, and links. So quite often you've got lots of websites when you're going to have something like, say, click here. So if you're tabbing through your website, you're blind, you're going to hear click here, click here, click here. You have no clue what's going to happen once you click on it. So it would be a bit better to say, to learn more about this offer, click here. That's a bit better already. But another thing is, you don't know if that person is on a website. Maybe they don't click, maybe they tap because they're on a mobile. So try to think when you're going to decide for the text of your link for something that makes sense for any device and for someone who might just hear that text. So learn more, click here, avoid doing that. Contact us, that's good, because if you click on contact us, you expect to end up on a page where you're going to have the phone numbers or the address. So try to make sure that every time you do a link, it makes sense. Plain language, yeah, so that's super important. Try to always make sure that it's clear. It's going to help everyone and not only people who have accessibility access. if you need to have a complex term, try to explain it first before you use it. And if you have an acronym, it's the same thing. The first time you're going to use that acronyms, try to expand it. Table, try to not merge or split cells, because it's going to be harder for someone to interpret your table if you've done that. And it's going to be even harder if that person is using a screen reader to go through your table. So avoid doing that. And there's actually much more to that guidance. So if you want to read more, it was written for a console, but it's actually very good principle and they are well explained. So there's a link to go through that. And yes, so if there's a few things you can do. So maybe before I send you there, I'm going to show you how Accessible Colors, that website to test color, works. So that's the website I'm going to send you to. So here, for example, that heading, I don't know if you know how to make sure, if you want to know the color code for that, you can see it here. I had prepared it before, but try to look for the color code. So I'm going to copy that. And that's the website I'm using. That's many websites. This one is quite good. So here, you're going to put your text color here. So I'm going to paste. For that, copy it. So, not sure I got it. Yeah, okay. And so on this one, you can even select the size of the text, and the background color was white. So the code for white is F. So here, you can see here, that's the same heading color, and that fails. We'll see later what that AA means, but it fails AA. So here they show you, if it was with a black background, you would pass. And if you want to keep the white background, it's telling you that that color, which is slightly darker, actually passes. So that's quite a good website to make sure that when you create your website, the colors you're using are going to be accessible and contrasted enough. So I'll let you try that on that website to have a look, and look at the pictures and try to see what would you put for an alt text. I don't think there's too many pictures on this one, but you can navigate and find other pictures. And yeah, that's a different website. That's a weather website. Look at the link and imagine just hearing that link. Would that be good enough for you to understand where that link is going to take you? So that's it. And I think you've got 10 minutes for that. So, for example, on that website that was for hairstyles, you would imagine that in an alt text, you would probably speak about the hairstyle a lot compared to another picture where you might describe more the landscape or who's on the picture. So depending on the context of your picture, you might put something different in the alt text. Just always make sure that you convey the information that that picture is actually meant to be doing. The color contrast, I hope you managed to use the website. This one is quite good. There's lots of other websites you can use. The links, I don't know if anyone has managed to find a better links for that weather website. Okay. Next one, so WCAG, so that stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So usually if you go to an accessibility course, that's the type of thing that people are gonna start with, because that's the standards, that's what you're supposed to respect. But actually, it's actually quite scary to start with that. And that's a slide I've seen at a conference for accessibility. I think that's the amount of page of standard you're supposed to read through for WCAG. And if that's your point of entry for accessibility, you're probably going to say, nah, that's just too hard. I'm not going to go through that. And it doesn't have to be hard like that. You don't have to know about everything. Usually you just go through some of these items, and the most thing that you can do are actually, it kind of cover everything. So that's why it's so complete, but you don't need to know every single part of it, unless you work in accessibility specifically. So it's a massive document, and it also keep changing. So I'll give you a link so you can have a feel for yourself, but it's not a very engaging document. The last version has been done in 2018, and there are 3 levels of compliance. That's the A, that's the minimum, AA, that's the one you're aiming for, and AAA, even better. So for example, when you were checking the color contrast, that was aiming for AA, but if you do even better color contrast, you're going to see AAA. And if you can, because at the moment we need to be compliant with AA, but if you can do even better, why not? So try to aim for AA, but if you can do AAA, even better. The last time they've changed the guidelines, I think they hadn't done it for a long time. It was to try to take a better account of people who have cognitive and learning disability, because they were mostly focusing on physical disability initially. Be better on low vision, and also because now everyone is using mobile device. It wasn't so much the case the last time they've done the guidelines. So the last change are more looking at mobile device. So they have 4 key principles, and they call that P.O.U.R. So P is for perceivable. So you've got the definition, but even the wording of the definition are not that clear. Basically, it means that any information you have on your website, people should be able to see it, or at least know it's there by one sense or another. So if they can't see, they should hear it with their screen reader. So you need to make sure that you've done it properly. Operable, that means that you need to be able to, a user with specific needs needs to be able to do any action. So for example, if you need to upload a picture, you might be able to browse in your folder, or you might be able to drag and drop. But if you only do drag and drop as an option, some people are not going to be able to do that. So that's operable. Make sure that anyone, even people with access need, are going to be able to operate your website. So the U is for understandable. So you need to make sure that people are going to understand so it's not just the level of English, it needs to be intuitive, and for people with different ability to understand how to use it. And it needs to be robust, that's the R. So with this one, they're thinking ahead. If you are using some technology, you need to make sure that maybe in 5 years' time, it's going to work. And if people are using assistive technology, that's not going to be interfering with your own website. So that's what robust means in that sense. So after that, you need also to remember that WCAG is just guidelines, and you might be complying with the guideline, but you might still be doing something really bad. So that's 2 examples of ramp. So if you see this one, yeah, the person can go in the house technically, but imagine having to do that and all the terms. So that's a solution that's compliant, but it's not a good solution. And the one that looks really nice and everyone are like, wow, that's super, that's great. They've integrated accessibility with the stairs, but actually imagine being with a wheelchair, and even for someone who's just going down the stairs, you might fall. It's actually quite risky. So that's compliant, but it's not a good solution. So respecting the standards doesn't always mean that's it, you're done. You've done what you needed to do. You might have done it legally, but it's still not good for the users. So that's why WCAG it's good to set a standard, but don't just rely on it. And another thing as well is test it. So this slide is something, so when I was at conference, that was part of the work of Access Lab, and you could see someone, so for example, the touch target means the area are big enough. So someone with tremor should be able to use it because there's a big space where they can actually touch it. But you could see a video, and I think I've put the link in the notes, or if you look at the slides, you can see a video of a man who's got tremor, so his hand is moving. And he was actually really struggling to pass from one to the other. And they just added a bit of space between them. So that's not part of the standard, but it did help that person a lot. So you wouldn't know that if you didn't test it. So you need to look at the standard, but then you need to test with people. And that's the only way you're going to realize, does it work or does it not? And another example, so I don't know if you can see the problem here, but see, for example, when you're looking for, you want to do a search and you need to enter your location. Well, if you can say, use my location, that's going to be very helpful. So you would think, yeah, that's great. They're doing something really good. WCAG is okay with that. You've made something easier. But actually, if you are, when they tested that, because they didn't use the right label, the person would, with a screen reader would find the search, but they would never find that element. They would only find it when it's too late, and they had to really struggle with the search. So again, if you don't test, you might not realize that what you think is really good is actually not being found by some people with a screen reader or any other access problem. So always try to test your whatever you're doing, even if it's compliant. So there's quite a few links here. I think maybe the easiest one would be the last one, that's the government one, and I think they're a bit better at explaining what the standard is. But that's not the best way to start something if you want to look at accessibility, because it's quite complex and that might put you off, and it shouldn't. So what next? So if there's some homework, this is a bit more for you to do. And I've done a little quiz as well, just for you to assess how much you remember from that and what's the most important things. If you can start to apply all these things to everything you do, so if you're in social media, if you write a document, there's little things like that that you can start trying to do. And you can also go to accessibility meetups. I will post them in the Slack channel, and most of them are online at the moment, so there's lots of things you can actually see. If you're on Twitter, that's something I do a lot. I follow people who are blind or who are deaf or who have any some kind of problem where they advocate for it, because they're usually very good at explaining on a daily basis what problems they have that I might not have never realized before. So that's a good way of understanding what problem people face. And if you know about it, then you're better equipped to try and not to make it happen to them. So that's one thing you can do as well. We're going to do another course that's going to be more about how you code to make sure that your code is accessible. And we'll probably, it's a different level as well, because some things are easy, some things are a bit more demanding, but there's things that could be useful for you. And yeah, for me, the main thing to take away is that you won't get it right every time. You're going to do some mistakes. We all do. Even if you're super aware, there's always something you won't have thought of, but that's how you learn, and you can do better next time. So make a start and learn from it. And when you're going to be in a team, hopefully you'll do lots of testing, and that's where you learn. Test with users, and you're going to see what you can improve. So that's me. I hope it was useful, and I think we are on time. So even if you have some question, I think I could try to answer some questions.
I suppose I have a question, Stephanie. Are there any examples, like good examples, for websites and links? Is it on the slide?
So there's nothing in the slide. Usually the government websites are quite good, but as you can see, the apply for provisional license is a government website. It's actually really bad. So usually the government one are supposed to be good, council one not so much. I've seen terrible forms in councils. And I remember being told that, so see, for example, you could imagine that the website for the RBN, so it's the Royal Institute for the Blind. They should have a really good website. And I was told by an accessibility expert that in fact they were not so great. They were great for a screen reader, but they were not good for other aspects of accessibility. So it's a bit hard to see. One thing you can do, and that's going to be part of the other course, there's lots of plugins that you can use that's going to give you an automatic check. So that's also already good advice. But it does nothing that's going to replace the test by a human of your website. But no, it's actually easier to find bad websites than good ones. And even that's one thing that's always a bit strange. Lots of people who are aware of accessibility for one reason or another. So for example, they might be blind, so they're going to be great for screen reader, but they might be doing things that are wrong for people with autism or dyslexia because they are aware of their own problem, but might not be aware of other people's problem.
Yeah, no, I use a screen reader actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I know.
So
this
you know how
was
bad
really
it can
good.
be.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So this is really relevant to me. So I was more interested in what could be a good example. But if there are
usually,
plugins
honestly,
and stuff,
government websites, the YouGov UK government websites are usually good. They're not perfect, but because they have standard and especially the new websites, they can't go live unless they've been tested, and Accessibility is part of all the assessments they have. So normally they should be good.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's been a really good lesson.
I wanted to show that picture as well. See, I've realized, so for example, this one that's done by people who have an interest in accessibility, but actually putting text on a picture like that's not good practice. Even if you put an alt text, because it's harder to read. So usually you're not supposed to put any text on a picture. And when you scale it as well, like for the more recent pictures, it doesn't look good. So even though these people have an interest, they didn't respect some of the rules because they probably didn't realize. So we all make mistakes. I still do lots of mistakes, but you just start somewhere. And that's also why following people who do have issues, different issues, that's going to help you as well to realize all the problem that you can create without even realizing it.
No, thank you, Stephanie. It's really good.
You're welcome.
Excellent.
I'm glad you like it.
It was excellent. Thank you.
Good. And yeah, so if you could look at the slide, there's lots of links. There's links in the Google Doc for the homework, and there's a bit of homework if you're interested, and the little quiz just to assess how much you remember. And I think that's me.
Fantastic.